Keep in mind that this episode of Alicorn talks about a really sensitive subject that may be uncomfortable for some of Code Equestria's normal views. So your discretion is advised in that notion. And secondly, if you are a fan of Netflix's Bojack Horseman, there is spoilers to the just released season 3. We'll be discussing to make note of all the stuff that is in the forthcoming video. So, this is your one true spoiler warning. Be forewarned. Thank you. When it comes to fame and all the price that comes with it, there's also something that is also associated very directly to it. And it's one of the most scary things in modern medical science: depression. Yes, Code Equestria fans, we're going there. Depression is a subject that many things in fiction have either slightly dabbled in or tried to fully express. Movies have done this a lot more often in a lot more unique ways. But the pressures of fame are something that all forms of media deal with. And having to deal with that fame and what it means to be famous. I mean, My Little Pony itself has had 2 episodes that have had to deal with this, and even most recently in Friends Forever number 30, fame has been used repeatedly in the subject. Green Isn't Your Color, Twilight Time for the Show, and of course the aforementioned comic. But why talk about depression and fame? Well, that is the main subject of not only season 3 of Bojack Horseman, a show that I've reviewed both of its previous seasons and plan to give you the proper review of this season post haste. Well, that's the main subject that the entire series is based around. One guy's inability to deal with the lack of it, Bojack, and all the damage he causes over just not having fame in his life. Plus the fact that his parents were absolute freaking douchebags. Just watch season 2 and you get a couple of examples of that douchebaggery. But also, not only that his parents are douchebags, but the entire Hollywood industry has been a bunch of douchebags to this guy. Thinking that all he can do is essentially be typecast as a horse. But yes, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that a lot of his pain, especially in this last season, has been a self-inflicted wound. And now, at the end of season 3, and here comes the big spoilers, he's finally, at long last, hit rock bottom. All of his friends are no longer with him or care. His agent, he essentially dumped, has moved on to become a manager, and everybody in Bojack's life seems to be better without him. But most importantly, he's finally going through the biggest and most important stage of depression, the acceptance that there is a problem and that it may be time for not only a setting change, it looks like, but a life change due to his many different faults, due to his own anger, self-loathing, self-destructive nature and the depression therein. I do have to give credit to the recent IGN review that mentioned depression as one of the core lines behind this train of thought. It's mainly the main motivation of why I wanted to do this video. Because, like the IGN review stated, no show in proper television ever has ever gone this dark or this deep with depression, and let alone how fame or the want to be famous not only in the moment but constantly can lead to this kind of depression. Many YouTube stars, even admitted ones like Markiplier and PewDiePie, have had to deal with this sort of depression and loathing caused by the fame they have for these mega channels. And even I have to admit, I've had my times of doubt in the medium too. After doing 493 videos, you'd think I would wake up mostly with a smile on my face, ready to do this. But there are some days that even somebody like myself can even doubt his own creative ability, or even the want, especially in video game reviews, to even do this anymore. But I keep telling myself, especially in the video game review side, that it's for the greater good. That me being somewhat more harsh or different than most YouTube reviewers is something that is necessary, and that keeps me motivated. Plus, just to have somebody view my opinion, not necessarily agree with it, is enough to make it worthwhile for me. After all, I'm not making money doing this job. Heck, I'm not even famous doing it. I'm just an average YouTube schmo with a big head and a big voice. Sort of similar to Bojack. And I do have issues, just like him, with pushing people, especially really close people, away. Mainly because when you've been depressed, or even if you are depressed, and yes, I did say the word been. Let me take you back to the year 2001. I was a junior in high school. Unfortunately, I had lost my first girlfriend ever. Yes, my first one. Being disabled has its problems, and relationships are, unfortunately, one of the big ones. See, I made some critical mistakes at the end of the relationship, and I ended up paying for it spiritually and emotionally. It really hurt me, combined with the deaths of my grandmother Mary and my then stepmother Angie, compiled with my own feelings about my disability and my own sense of non-worth. I was delved into a year of depression. I've talked about it before in the How Digimon Saved My Life video. But in truth, it was that dealing with depression that was the hardest part. Much like Bojack, I pushed people away, became more distant, started running away from the problems, and even running away from the hobbies that I used to enjoy. Playing video games or even watching professional wrestling was a vague black hole of nothingness. Because that's how I felt. Like nothing. That everything that I had done before, from winning a Special Olympics gold medal to my then at the time high GPA, which at the end of my life I ended with a 3.58, meant nothing. It just was a endless void of nothing. And then after I got out of high school, I had a brief rush of fame, as I had mentioned before. So, yes, I even know the fame part. I even know the pressure of living up to people's expectations or your own expectations. To talk yourself in self worth. That no matter if the world is telling you or expressing outwardly that you're not worth anything, that you have to continue to tell yourself harshly that you're still worth it. That's the problem that Bojack goes through throughout the entirety of the series so far, and especially ahead in season 3, as his greatest career accomplishment seems just an arm's grasp away. But it's not, mainly due to the events of some of the tomfoolery between Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter, two of his quote unquote best friends, but even they admit to themselves that they're not really friends with Bojack. And everybody does. And it happens in an astonishing chain reaction. After a ill-advised Oscar nomination celebration party that almost ends up in him, well, ending up at that pool at the beginning of the start sequence, drowning to death. But thanks to Mr. Peanut Butter and ironically Diane, I think this is the entire point of the sequence, the mimic the opening title. Bojack is saved and revived. The whole notion of his life going down a downward spiral and still continuing, losing his friends, losing his agent, losing his restaurant, and then ultimately, in an effort to do a modern day sort of full house revival of his famous show Horsing Around, after one of the child actors says, I want to be like you, he completely loses his mind and his will to even be in Hollywood. He he totally loses everything. And that's because, like most depression victims, after a while there's a moment that triggers the moment of clarity. The moment that the depressee realizes that he's finally depressed and he's finally ready to take the first steps in fixing himself. Like his former co-star and maker of Ethan Around says, where are you going? And Bojack responds with the term, I don't know. That's how most depressionees feel with this moment of clarity. The I don't know. I've spent so much time being depressed, feeling the pressures of whether it be fame or your own spiritual self. You come to that point where you say, I don't know. Because in truth, you don't. But you know, just like the old bar saying goes, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. But what happens if you're a depressee and, well, you don't know where home is? You haven't known where home is. You're addicted. You're addicted to the attention of you being angry, of you being pushy, as it drives you away. And especially if you're famous, you become drunk and addicted off the fame. It becomes your number one addiction, the thing you need. When you're no longer famous anymore, oftentimes for some actors, they try desperately to recapture the fame, only never to hit it. Just watch any sad episode of Behind the Music and you get that idealism through your head. But Bojack tells it in an even darker and more brutal sense. It honestly hit home to me. in a way that was so crushing that I couldn't even talk to my friends over Xbox Live after viewing the final episode of season, called That's Too Much Man, when everything just hits like a ton of bricks, and you know your life has to change irreversibly right now. That moment that you need freedom, that wake up call. I've been there, and many others have been there, and many others have been struggling with it throughout. I struggled with it. And in some days, much like Luna, the things that made me depressed come back to haunt me again. Like a demon I have to refight. Like being in the 10th round of Fight of 15. Me being disabled and me being under the ability to do the things that a normal person does while interacting with people socially in real life. I won't lie to you. There's no veil. It's an everyday struggle I still have to deal with, that some days I feel I can't deal with. And then it comes back, ever so slightly. I use video games, wrestling, and this channel, and yes, My Little Pony, to fight these battles of inner self. And so far, for the most part, I'm still winning. But for many others out there, they aren't winning. They're still struggling with it. And especially if you're famous, the struggle is constant because you never get a moment of privacy in your life. That's why I've always said when it comes to this YouTube channel, if I ever became famous, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I wouldn't know how to deal with it. The pressure would be, admittedly, sometimes too much. I wouldn't know how to deal with a channel with messages going down the floor like Dr. Wolf, endless comments, endless stuff on the Tumblr, and yes, endless hate for a decision I made or a review that I did, or whether I liked last week's pony episode or not. Some days I, admittedly, couldn't handle it. But on those days that I could, which would be most, I would be glad that someone, anyone, is listening. And for those that are battling depression, all those people need are someone to listen to, someone to relate, someone to take them aside and sometimes, yes, even though it hurts our own individual spirits, be the one to take the punching bag, to take the anger. Because sometimes all a depressioner needs to feel, just like Bojack, is a sense of value, a sense of meaning, a sense that no matter if they screw it up, they were still someone important in this big world, to be recognized. Yes, much like the scene at the planetarium, we are all just little specks in a greater universe. That ultimately, as history goes, our recognition will be forgotten. But sometimes people go through life without even the notion of even the slightest recognition. And they try so hard. They battle so far. They go out their way. They create personalities for themselves. And they hide underneath it. And they become so wrapped up in the personality, in the fiction, that it becomes their life. And they become all consumed by it. And then when the fame goes away, they don't know how to deal. And the cycle starts. Fame is a thing thing that is fleeting. Yes, it's a great thing to attain, but in that journey to fame, everyone should ask themselves, are they spiritually ready to handle the pressure? Are they spiritually ready to handle the pain that no doubt not having fame will cause? Is recognition, whether it be as an actor, a YouTube star, or anything, professional gamer, whatever, you truly have to ask the question, is it worth it? Is it worth the sleepless nights? Is it worth the pain? Is it worth pushing your friends away because you are so dedicated to maintaining the fame? Is it worth it? It's a big question. It's a loaded question. And it's a question that Bojack Horseman asked with no caveat and no gravitas. It is a question that is on the show's very surface from the very beginning to now, where it's at. And it makes people in search of a little piece of heaven, a little piece of something, a little piece of worth like me, have to ask the question again, is it worth it? Well, for me, it most certainly is. Because for me, all I want is for someone to listen. Someone to pay attention. They don't have to agree. They don't have to disagree. But they have to open their minds and be willing to listen. Yes, I'm a disabled person, and my life, it isn't easy. Has a lot of pressures that are way beyond anything that making this YouTube video could express. But it is through these videos that I learn and have learned to deal with these pressures, to deal with these weights, to vent. It is for me, my own psychologist. Sure, if the day comes where doing this, I have a brush with fame, at least I've dealt with it before. And at least I know the horror stories of those that do not know how to deal with it right. But depression is a monster that we all conquer through. It all goes through many phases. Whether we choose to drown in our own spiritual pool of regret or to be resuscitated by our friends is our own choice. But it is also our choice to push them away. With depression, you have a choice. You either face it with a brand new day, or you decide to run away with it. You decide to get into your own free Tesla earned by an Oscar nomination. You decide to start driving at 60 only to put the speed up. Take your hands off the steering wheel. And you decide in that second, will I allow the car to veer off the road and spin and crash? Or do I take the hands of the wheel, turn the car to a stop, and look at the gaze of seeing horses run free, and dream of a time when I can be like that too? Maybe for Bojack, this is the beginning of that moment. And maybe, for some of you with depression, this video might be. But don't be afraid to face it. Don't be afraid to be the one to take the hand of the car of life and veer it towards some place happier. No, you don't have to go home. But if you're with depression, you don't have to stay there either. There is a place beyond it. There is a place beyond dealing with the pressure. It's whether we're strong enough spiritually to have the ability, to have the chops, to not go for the hypothetical awards that people want us to have, but to go for the awards of life, the rewards that are fulfilling. To truly give ourselves the answer of yes to the world's greatest question. Is it all worth it? Just some food for thought. Find peace in your own nirvana. And thanks for watching.